The finest hotels offer much more than a place to rest your head. There are golf courses, swimming pools, and lush gardens. And sometimes, there may be ghosts. Come along on a trip to England, where a fiery night in a country mansion ties a young maidservant to its passages.
The hair on the back of my neck just raised up.
This southern bed and breakfast is said to be home to a murderous spirit who lingers at the site of her unspeakable crime.
There are some spirits that consider you an uninvited guest, and sometimes they let you know it.
In Rhode Island, peering eyes from beyond keep watch as guests pass through their former home.
They can be sitting next to you at dinner time. They can be going up the staircase with you as you're bringing in your luggage.
Journey with us as we delve into a realm of fear, where phantoms haunt and terrifying tales come alive. When you check into a haunted hotel, double occupancy takes on a whole new meaning. In Newport, Rhode Island, mansions line the ocean drives, each a little bigger and more expensive than the next. But step off the beaten path, and you will find one of the grandest, the Inn at Shadow Lawn. The innkeepers have named the mansion's 8 elegant guest rooms after 19th century writers. And they invite the public to pause and spend a night in this peaceful retreat. There, the private lives of those who lived and died long ago unfold once more. And according to some, spirits keep watch.
Some of them are very unhappy that we're here.
The story of one unhappy spirit goes back to Victorian days. In 1856, a wealthy man named Hamilton Hoppin built the home on the outskirts of town.
The house is one of the first Italianate stick-style houses to be built in the United States.
Its rarity made Shadow Lawn the object of much admiration. And some say that Hamilton enjoyed showing off his fine house, lording it over his younger brother, Thomas.
Well, what would you like me to do about that?
Jealousy finally drove the two brothers apart.
Absolutely.
But perhaps not forever. A century after both brothers were dead and buried, the innkeepers tried to find a picture of Hamilton, the house's original owner, but had no luck. Instead, they acquired a painting of the younger brother, Thomas, and hung it in Shadow Lawn, his proud big brother's old home.
It's right on the staircase as you go in. It's quite impressive. He looks like he owns the world, not to mention the Inn at Shadow Lawn.
Perhaps it was the painting that awakened a long-dead rivalry. The innkeepers believe that at the very moment the image of Thomas was hung, Hamilton Hoppin sent an angry message.
When we put his picture up, all the clocks in the house turned back an hour. It was uncanny. Unbelievable. Every single clock in the house. To me, it seemed like going back in time.
The innkeepers quickly discovered that Hamilton and Thomas had never buried the hatchet.
There was a very heaviness to the room at the time, and we felt the coldness.
And what they saw next would haunt them forever.
We witnessed the spirits of Hamilton Hoppin and his younger brother Thomas Hoppin. They got into an argument. Thomas was torturing his older brother for some reason.
The innkeepers say that with Thomas lurking in his house, Hamilton will never rest in peace. And today, the brothers keep close watch on each other and all who enter the old family home.
I feel that he's looking at me going up the steps when I get to that picture. And when I come down the steps after checking in a guest, he's looking at me.
Whether they are protecting Shadow Lawn from each other or even the staff, day and night, it seems the Hoppen brothers are watching. But there is one haunting event that seems totally disconnected from the dueling brothers.
There are also other spirits here at the Inn at Shadow Lawn that are here because they have no other choice.
Each night during the month of June, the innkeepers go to bed asking themselves one question. Will tonight be the night when she returns? There is no way of knowing which one night she will pick and what she will destroy. Every June, objects in the front hallway are found smashed violently on the floor. And most recently, Shadow Lawn guests woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of something shattering.
Our grand mirror came crashing down into the hallway. It must have been 2:30 in the morning.
But who is the angry specter behind this mischief? The story of the spirit dates back to 1913. Legend has it that a newlywed heiress moved to Shadow Lawn with her husband, a young and dashing Newport doctor. But the fairy tale life she had imagined came crashing down around her when her husband revealed his true colors.
He started openly cheating on her with other women. He would parade his women in front of his wife.
With his wife's money, the doctor bought one of the first horseless carriages.
At first, when it was purchased, he would take his wife out, but that became less and less. It was more of a time to flaunt and philander around with his other ladies.
Every day, the doctor's wife would stand by her window, watching and waiting for her cheating husband to return. And the rage inside her grew. Then, on a balmy day in June, the doctor returned home from one of his frequent afternoon trysts. But this time, there was a figure waiting in the bushes. The doctor stepped out of his car and was gunned down by an unseen assailant.
Literally out of the blue, out of nowhere, he was shot to death.
No one who knew the couple had any doubt as to who the murderer was.
There's no way you could say otherwise that this was made out of total vengeance.
The doctor's wife was charged with murder. And though she was eventually acquitted, locals were sure it was a case of a woman scorned and driven to kill. She spent the rest of her life shunned by the entire town. But innkeepers believe that each June she returns to Shadow Lawn to set the record straight and to tell the world her husband had left her no other choice.
She does want to make herself known. She does want to tell her story, to put her point across to people.
Each June, when antiques come crashing down in the front hall, the innkeepers believe it is her misunderstood spirit lashing out at those who would judge her.
Because I'm sure she did love him, there must have been a tremendous amount of guilt. It's almost a tormented feeling.
At other times, guests are startled by a shadowy figure by the bedroom window. Someone waiting up late.
In the room that she does inhabit, lights have remained on, possibly waiting for him to come home.
The innkeepers believe it is the doctor's wife, hoping against hope that her straying husband will finally come home to her. And every June, it seems she just might get her wish.
Once a year, a horseless carriage would come up into the driveway, and somewhere along the driveway, it would vanish. since he never made it home, this is his way of finally making it home.
Some feel the inn at Shadow Lawn is full of spirits.
They can be sitting next to you at dinner time. They can be going up the staircase with you as you're bringing in your luggage.
But consider yourself warned. Ghosts have their own ways of letting you know they were here first.
There are some spirits that consider you an uninvited guest in their home. And sometimes they let you know it.
Coming up, amid the fruitful vineyards of California's wine country, two lovers search for each other from beyond the grave. And when we return, guests at this luxury New Hampshire resort speak of a visitation in the dead of night.
She looked down the long hall, and she said there was a perfect white shroud.
Rest and relaxation await you when you spend the night in a luxury hotel. But if the hotel is said to be haunted, you might not be the only one to make yourself at home. The White Mountains of New Hampshire are a favorite spot for tourists who want to get back to nature. And for many of them, the perfect retreat is the Mount Washington Hotel and Resort. Guests have been checking into the hotel's 300 rooms for just over a century.
We're located right at the base of Mount Washington. We're a little lucky here because the mountain acts as a real buffer for us and sort of protects us from the winds. So things are pretty calm.
But late at night, the calm is broken by reports that things are not quite as peaceful as they seem.
And she walked straight up to me and she looked me in the eye and she said to me, "Is this place haunted?"
When Mount Washington first opened its doors, its graceful combination of fresh air and world-class luxury attracted America's elite, the Vanderbilts, Astors, and Rockefellers. But it was the hotel's proud hostess that ensured such high society clientele would return year after year. Her name was Carolyn, and some say, though she died long ago, she plays the hostess still. At the turn of the last century, Joseph Stickney, a hard-working hotelier, built Mount Washington as a testament to his success and as an expression of his deep love for his wife, Carolyn.
He was the love of her life and she was the love of his life. They spent a lot of time together. They enjoyed each other's company.
Their love flourished at Mount Washington. And while Joseph took care of the business affairs, Carolyn played the gracious hostess to society's elite.
One of the things that she was very well noted for was somehow she always managed to be the best dressed. She always wore the finest jewels.
Outdoing the wealthiest women in the world wasn't easy, but Carolyn had a secret weapon. Each night, she stood out of sight on the balcony for a sneak preview of her guests' elegant evening attire.
From the balcony, there's a view of the grand staircase. Now, Carolyn had a perfect view of all the ladies coming down for dinner.
Carolyn would choose her wardrobe only after taking note of the other women, and her grand entrance always turned heads. But Carolyn's enjoyment of her public duties as hostess could never compare with the quiet passion that filled her private life. After tending to their guests, Joseph and Carolyn always dined alone by candlelight. And like young lovers, they would end each evening with a dance in the ballroom. But their epic romance was not to last. Years of hard work had taken their toll. And one day, without warning, Joseph's heart gave out.
Joseph died in December of 1903. just 2 seasons after the hotel was open.
Though the passion that had filled Carolyn's world was gone, she chose to stay where she and Joseph had been the happiest.
She would still be seen wandering the property and doing the things that they enjoyed together. I think it was a way for her to sort of heal and get through that loss.
When at last she died, many years later, most assumed Mount Washington had lost its guardian angel. But according to the staff, it seems Carolyn was destined to return.
It's the manifestation of a figure passing by out of the corner of your eye. It's the turn of a doorknob or the jingle of a key. It's just these little signs that let us know that Carolyn's around.
But many of Carolyn's signs are not so subtle. Late one night, a hotel guest said she received a very disturbing visit.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, she heard a light knock on her door.
When the guest answered the door, it appeared at first as if no one was there. But when she stepped into the corridor, she saw something that made her blood run cold.
She looked down the long hall, and she said there was a perfect white shroud, and it just was moving at a steady pace.
Locals say Carolyn has never left Mount Washington and has never let go of her old habits. Each night before dinner is served, a hazy outline is seen on the balcony overlooking the grand staircase, watching as guests arrive. Night staff at the hotel say they have traced the sounds of a romantic melody wafting through the halls, only to find the tune transcends both space and time.
It wasn't a song I recognized, but it was a melody, and it repeated itself, but we couldn't come up with a location. Each time we sought out the area, it would seem to be the same distance away.
When the hotel's guests have gone to bed, a hush falls over the resort. But out of the silence, the music will begin again, reminding visitors that Carolyn is still there, and warning staff not to walk the historic halls alone.
Now, the night that it was a full moon, and the windows rattling, you would find yourself definitely looking over your shoulder more, hearing a few more noises that you didn't hear earlier.
And one night on a routine security round through the hotel, Fred Hollis had a brush with more than just music. As he walked towards the ballroom, the chandeliers above him began to tremble. And when he entered the ballroom where Carolyn and Joseph once danced, for a moment, the past seemed to cross over into the present.
One evening I was walking into the ballroom, which I had done on many, many occasions before, and I got about halfway across the ballroom floor when every hair in my body electrified. I mean, it tingled. I had the strongest presence. Couldn't tell you today if I could have gone further. Really no explanation.
As when she lived, perhaps Carolyn will never abandon Mount Washington or relinquish the greatest love of her life.
I think the reason that Carolyn haunts this place is that this was where her heart was. This was where her Joseph was.
Coming up, years after the murder that tore her away, a Savannah specter pays an unexpected visit to her old home.
I knew I was looking at someone that did not represent our time.
And when we return, at this English retreat, a desperate spirit tries to check out.
She wants to get out, and I don't know how to release her.
In a haunted hotel, things aren't always as they seem. When you glimpse a fellow guest in the hall, look again. Are they really there at all? In the shadow of England's Windsor Castle, where tourists flock to catch a glimpse of royalty, there is a forest alive with spirits. The woods here are scattered with the bones of those who met untimely and violent ends.
Windsor is a very historic area. So severe were some of the laws decreed by the monarchs that many tragedies happened in the forest.
When the sun goes down, locals believe unmarked graves open wide and tortured souls bemoan their ghastly deaths.
They used to do terrible things to people, didn't they? So you can imagine that people came back and haunted people because of the atrocities.
In the heart of this haunted landscape is the village of Ascot, a quaint locale with a storied past.
Ascot has a number of legendary ghosts.
And according to locals, Ascot's most active ghost makes her home at the Berystede. The Berystede was built in the mid-1800s as a traditional English country house.
It's an old-fashioned building, red brick, with the turrets on, one pointed, one round.
The Berystede's lovely gardens and lawns attract guests seeking quiet repose. But it is the legend of a young woman named Eliza Kleininger that truly sets this hotel apart from all the rest. At a young age, Eliza left her home in Germany for a new life in England, where she dedicated herself to serving the Lady of Berystede, Mrs. Standish. Eliza had no family and no friends, but she adored Mrs. Standish like a mother.
Eliza would have been very close to Mrs. Standish because she would have looked after all her clothes, her jewels and everything.
Eliza took special pride in caring for Mrs. Standish's jewels, for the exquisite collection had been in the family for centuries. She would spend hours polishing the gems. And since the Standishes were the only family Eliza knew, it was as if the jewels were part of her lineage too. But one night, just after 3 a.m., disaster struck.
I don't know how the fire started, but the place must have been well alight. There were no fire engines and fire alarms in those days.
Mrs. Standish and Eliza got out in time, but their home was engulfed. And as Berystede burned before Eliza's horrified eyes, she suddenly thought of Mrs. Standish's jewels trapped in the fire. Hundreds of years of the family's heritage would be lost forever. In a split second, she made a rash decision that would cost her far more than diamonds and gold. She went back into the blaze.
Which, of course, in retrospect was very foolish because she perished in the fire.
Eliza was overcome by smoke on her way out of the house. She died at the base of the stairs, the door to safety just a few feet away. And from that day forward, Berystede lay still.
The Standish family moved away and the house stood empty for a long time because the legend of Eliza Kleininger.
But perhaps the house wasn't quite empty. Shortly after Eliza's death, locals spoke of seeing a ghostly form as they passed the Berystede on dark and foggy nights. And so, even after the home was restored, no one dared to purchase it for fear of awakening Eliza's spirit.
Because there was a ghost, the people wouldn't have wanted to live in here.
Never again was the building to be a private home. When the property was finally sold, it became a hotel.
You come up the stone steps, you come into the lobby, and then there's a beautiful staircase, the original staircase in the building.
The only physical evidence of the building's scarred history is a set of oddly mismatched turrets. One was consumed in the fire, and had to be rebuilt. But the new owners quickly discovered that the Berystede contained one other reminder of that tragic night. Just after 3 a.m., the same hour that fire swept through the Berystede so long ago, the sound of rasping breath echoes through the halls.
It can be very eerie at night. Maintenance men have heard inexplicable noises.
Hotel guests make sure they are safely in their rooms by 3, because according to legend, when the clock strikes that fateful hour, Eliza begins to roam.
People see the ghost of Eliza Kleininger walking through the hotel in various places, mainly on the upper floors.
There are those who believe death took Eliza unaware, and that she does not realize she is gone. They believe the slight form that is seen descending the staircase again and again, night after night, is merely Eliza looking for a way out.
The ghost of Eliza Kleininger remains in the hotel because a ghost remains on the site where they were killed in tragic circumstances.
As they dress for the evening, guests at the Berystede often feel they have some invisible company. And whether they like it or not, it seems Eliza is here to stay. Tragedy binds her to the Berystede, and she may never escape the walls that surrounded her to the last.
Because she perished in the fire, she wants to get out. I don't know how to release her. And perhaps if I could, I would.
Coming up, a curious guest returns from the past.
I was sitting by myself in the parlor, and I looked up on the stairwell and saw this girl.
And up next, a decision made in desperation comes back to haunt an inn in California's lush wine country. In a haunted hotel, you never know who's at the door or what's behind the keyhole. In California's Napa Valley, visitors spend their days sipping fine wines and touring the vineyards that blanket its hills.
One of the most remarkable things about Napa Valley is the density of the wine-producing region. What you're seeing is essentially every driveway in the valley is a new winery.
After a day of roaming local vineyards, visitors are welcomed by the historic Napa River Inn.
As people come into the building, they are immediately taken with the history. The furnishings that you see in the hotel and the furnishings you see in the lobby definitely put you back 100 years.
The inn, formerly a thriving mill, once played an important part in Napa Valley's commerce. But not all of its history was happy, and reminders of the inn's darker days have sent some guests running in fear.
He thought he saw a man hanging from the trusses.
But who is this tortured soul, and why is he still here? According to local lore, the story goes back to the building's days as a mill. Albert Hatt Jr. was the mill's owner, and while he enjoyed his work, his true happiness was rooted in the love of his life, his wife, Margaret. The couple spent every moment side by side.
I envision Albert and Margaret spending time together and looking at all that they'd worked hard for and put together.
But good fortune would soon run out for Albert, when life as he knew it began to unravel.
There was a change in the Industrial Revolution. The steamship business started to decline. That started to turn the tide against the business.
But Margaret remained Albert's constant ray of hope, and her love kept him from despair. But soon, even this anchor would begin to slip through his fingers. Margaret fell ill. And the diagnosis was news that far eclipsed any business failure. It was tuberculosis. As Margaret suffered, Albert helplessly clung to her bedside. Until finally, the light of his life was gone forever.
Once Margaret died, I think he lost all thought of continuing. I think he lost the desire to continue to live.
With a heart too heavy to bear, Albert took fate into his own hands.
He hung himself, of all days, on April 1st, which is April Fool's Day.
With Albert's death, the once prosperous mill closed its doors once and for all.
For many, many years in the 1900s, after the mill went out of business, this beautiful brick building sat empty.
Finally, in the year 2000, the mill was renovated and became the Napa River Inn. Though the structure remained the same, the transformation from old mill to luxury hotel was astounding.
You'll come into the hotel and walk into a lobby that's all marble and chandeliers.
But though the look has changed, some feel that there is more left over from the old mill than just the bricks.
People have said that they've felt things, they've seen things. There are hauntings here at the Napa River Inn.
Napa Valley natives speculate about the two distinct presences that are said to roam the halls of the Napa River Inn, and always conclude that there are two souls forever intertwined that seek to be reunited.
Albert and his wife Margaret have taken up residency here.
Innkeepers and guests believe that Albert and Margaret's spirits are like two ships that pass in the night, never quite finding each other, but forever searching. Perhaps even using modern conveniences in their pursuit.
Somebody was in the elevator and going up and down.
And those wanting to escape Napa River Inn's most terrifying encounter should avoid the bakery. For it is there that guests report seeing Albert's apparition, reliving his darkest hour. Staff say the past lives on in the Napa River Inn. But many hold hope that the ghosts of Albert and Margaret will someday find one another and remain together for all eternity.
There are people destined to find each other and be with each other forever.
When we return, midnight in this Savannah garden brings no good, just evil, when a murderous spirit returns to the scene of the crime. When you hear a knock at the door in the middle of the night, don't bother with the peephole. In haunted hotels, security measures are no match for the uninvited. In Savannah, Georgia, travelers revel in the haunting beauty of the Spanish moss that shrouds the trees in mystery. Whenever a building goes up in Savannah, contractors discover something disturbing in the city's red clay earth.
So just about anywhere you dig in the historic district, you're going to find human remains.
Today, life goes on above this city of the dead, and travelers rest in Savannah's gracious homes and inns without ever knowing what or who may lie beneath. Across from Savannah's Forsythe Park, the sweeping veranda and shady courtyard of the Forsythe Park Inn welcomes guests with its southern charm.
From the exterior, it's a very inviting, happy, bright, cheerful home, but you cannot imagine until you actually enter into the home what it has to offer.
Paneled in rich woods, the inn is carved with charming details. But this veneer of beauty and grace fails to hide the building's dark history or veil the many stories of a spirit said to reside here. At the turn of the century, Forsythe was home to Aaron and Lois Churchill. Unable to have children of their own, the couple took in a young girl named Lottie and raised her like a daughter. In their home, Lottie enjoyed a life of comfort and privilege. And one day, the family made room for one more. Aunt Lois's younger sister, Anna, had fallen ill, and it seemed Forsythe would be the perfect setting for her recovery.
Lottie was so fond of Anna, and they seemed to do a lot together.
Anna was like the older sister Lottie never had. But Lottie would soon discover that she was not the only one who shared a special bond with the new guest.
One night, Lottie was just walking about the house, and she found her Uncle Aaron, who was really like her father, embraced in this passionate kiss.
And the woman he was kissing was not his beloved wife Lois, but her sister Anna.
She was so taken back and so angered by it. She didn't understand what was going on. She was so frightened that it would just tear the family apart.
Driven by a desperate need to protect her family, Lottie spent all night devising a rash plan. And the next afternoon at tea, she carried it out. A pinch of poison was all it took. And moments later, Aunt Lo cradled her dying sister as she took her last breath. Lottie's plan had worked, but her triumph would be short-lived. The moment Anna died, Aunt Lo revealed a secret that would destroy Lottie's young life.
Aunt Lo turned to Lottie and said, "This woman that has died is your mother." And from that moment on, Lottie's life was over as she knew it.
Lottie had poisoned the mother she had never known. Tortured by guilt and remorse, Lottie's mind turned against her. Finally, she was admitted into a mental hospital where she would ultimately die, far from the loving home she had cherished so much. In 1985, the home was converted into an inn, and today it houses weary travelers, unaware they may be sharing their rooms with a spirit still longing for home.
We had just acquired the inn, and I was sitting by myself in the parlor, and I looked up on the stairwell and saw this girl.
As the new innkeeper fixed her gaze, a chill went down her spine. The innkeeper soon learned the story of those who had lived in the house before her, and realized the face she had seen on the staircase was that of Lottie. The discovery was unnerving, but as she was about to learn, Lottie had a helpful streak. Late one night, the innkeeper looked for the keys to lock up the inn, but they were nowhere to be found.
I was really frustrated that I couldn't find the keys, and right at that moment of frustration, my kitchen door flew open, and the keys fell right before me, right to my feet.
The keys had dropped out of nowhere, perhaps a favor from beyond. Lottie is thought to roam everywhere in her old house, but there is one particular place that seems to lure this sad spirit. A quiet spot that was once the site of a horrible crime.
People have seen a young lady in a dress of that fashion in the garden.
When the full moon illuminates Savannah's night sky, they say Lottie's form roams the courtyard garden at Forsythe Park Inn, her tormented soul forever haunted by memories of a century-old murder.
You really can feel the spirits that have lived before us here. They are moving about all the time, and you will leave with an experience that you'll remember forever.
Skeptics claim that spirits are the figments of overactive imaginations. But those who have encountered visitors from beyond say that in a haunted hotel, fact can be much, much stranger than fiction.
Especially older hotels are haunted because they've seen so many people cross through them. So many lives have been changed and so many things have happened.
And so, if you find yourself sharing a room with something or someone you can't quite identify, think back to the ghost story you heard at the reception desk. Sleep tight.
This is just a reminder to subscribe to enjoy our growing collection of paranormal content. Don't forget to like your favorite episode and ring the bell to be notified of new content. As always, thanks for watching.